Welcome to the latest episode of the B Movie Club. I'm your host, Kevin. This week we'll be discussing the 1973 horror classic, Scream, Blacula Scream, starring William Marshall and Pam Grier. For those of you joining us for the first time, what we do on the B Movie Club is each week I will go onto our page on Facebook, the original B Movie Club, and I'll post a movie that we'll be doing. Your job is to rush to Netflix or dust off your video library and watch a movie, check it out, tell me what you think, post it on our page on Facebook. You can also reach me on Twitter at KD9575. Then, when my video comes out, you watch it and make comments on that as well. As you know, my video, you can subscribe to it on YouTube at KD9575. Don't forget to subscribe. Okay? You like my page on Facebook? You subscribe to my page on YouTube. Don't forget to tell all your homies and spread the word. The more the merrier. Scream, Blacula Scream. In the story, there's this internal power struggle going on in the local voodoo cult. The Mama Loa, who's the head of the cult, has recently died and has not named her heir. So her son, Big Willis, feels it should be him, but there's another person who has the voodoo power. And that person is played by Pam Grier. Everyone wants it to be her. Big Willis wants to be him. So when he feels like he's being pushed out of the cult, Big Willis goes and finds some ancient bones, performs an ancient voodoo ritual, and revives Blacula from the dust, basically. He died at the end of the previous movie, so this was him bringing him back. Sadly, Blacula does not follow Big Willis's commands and actually attacks Big Willis, turning him into a vampire. Spoiler alert. So there you go. So now, Blacula is roaming around. Blacula's real name is Prince Mamuwalde. In the previous movie, we found out he was an African prince who was turned into a vampire by the original Dracula. So there you go. He'd been in a slumber for hundreds of years and was brought to America when evidently they were having an estate sale in Transylvania, and some interior decorators found his coffin and thought it was really groovy. So they purchased it to, I don't know, be some kind of an accent piece in their foyer. They opened it, and of course there was Blacula. So there you have it. So he's out and about now and terrorizing the community. He's very slick because sometimes he'll appear as relatively a normal guy. He'll go and talk to people and meet people. Now he is wearing a red line cape for some reason. I don't know what the story is. He dresses exactly like Dracula did, so I don't know. I don't know what the thought process is behind that, but you do what you do, I guess. He discovers, because he was basically brought back to life by voodoo, that maybe voodoo can help him break his curse, kind of return him to a regular guy. Because even though he is the Black Prince of Shadows and has a lot of power, he can turn into a bat and things like that, he's not all that keen on his eternal curse of he has to drink blood to survive, things like that. So he is tracking down this voodoo priestess to maybe she can help him, Along the way, he gets bothered by street hustlers and pimps. He takes care of those guys. The cops start to figure out what's going on. The voodoo priestess's boyfriend is this wealthy guy who also happened to be a former police officer. So he's on the case as well. He's working with the police, the police sergeant. He quickly realizes that, hey, all the bodies have two hole marks on their neck and they're drained of blood. And that when the people are taking pictures of the crime scene, the bodies aren't showing any reflection. So they think it's vampires are on the loose. Meanwhile, across town, the voodoo priestess has taken pity on Blacula, and she'll use her powers to try to help him in some way, assuming he doesn't kill anybody else. Meanwhile, Big Willis who's a vampire now, is kind of revolting against Blacula because Blacula has determined that no one will touch this woman. But Big Willis isn't a big fan because remember he feels she usurped his position in the group. So even though he's a vampire, he still has kind of this animosity toward her. There's a lot going on. I don't want to give everything away, but it ends with a huge conflagration where the police invade Blacula's mansion, and then the vampires versus the cops, and Big Willis is there, and there's a whole lot going on. Again, I don't want to spoil everything, okay? You can rush out and see it if you haven't already. Let me know what you think. This movie came out, like I said, in 1973. Blacula is played by William Marshall, who you might remember played the King of Cartoons on Pee-wee's Playhouse many years later. He also had small roles in other things. He was like the conductor in Dirty Dancing. He was one of the gamblers in that Mel Gibson cowboy movie Maverick. So there you go. He's a recognizable guy. And in spite of the fact this is kind of a hokey premise, William Marshall, he really is quite good in this. I looked him up. I thought he was from like Europe or something because he's very cultured and very, he almost, it seems like he has a kind of an accent. But he's from like Gary, Indiana. So I mean, he plays this very seriously. He does his best and impressively. Some of the other performances, not so much. Pam Grier, who plays the voodoo priestess, you might remember her. She was big in the 70s black exploitation movie Scene. She was, of course, Foxy Brown. She was Coffee. More recently, she was Jackie Brown. So there you go. This movie tried to take the best parts of black exploitation films, a lot of music and fashion, huge afros, but also try to add real horror. Like I said, this is the sequel to the original Blacula, where they did kind of the same thing. There are obviously scenes that are kind of humorous, but overall they took it very seriously and did their best to create a real thing. The success, relative success, I should say, of Blacula obviously caused them to make Scream Blacula Scream, which didn't do as well, but I feel is still a very important film of the era. Sadly, it also spawned other movies, other horror blaxploitation movies such as Blackenstein, which didn't do very well. A few years later, they made Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde, starring Bernie Casey, which also wasn't a big hit. Shocking, I know, but the critics were mostly negative on this movie. What can I tell you? I mean, it's Scream Blacula Scream. Funny thing, the title of this movie, Scream Blacula Scream, came from, they actually asked the people who put on this movie, American International Pictures, basically had a poll and a contest within their company asking employees to come up with the title of this. And the best they could do was Scream Blacula Scream. Why is it called Scream Blacula Scream? I could not tell you. There's in fact one scene at the very end where Blacula looks up at the heavens and screams, "Ah!" But it's not like there's a bunch of scenes where people are like, "We're going to make Blacula scream. I'm going to fix his wagon and make him scream." There isn't a lot of that going on. You know, maybe they could have just called it Blacula Scream, because again, he only screams once. And it doesn't. And frankly, it seems like they kind of shoehorned the scream in there, because that's what they say in the title. There's a whole lot of screaming going on. Anyway, this is a vampire movie, but there really isn't that much blood. There's a lot of people getting their neck bit, but there isn't streams of blood or anything like that going on. So there you go. I love watching these kind of movies where there's a lot of music, because especially these low budget movies, oftentimes the music is kind of that made up music. I mean, it's real music, but it's not any music that anybody's ever heard of prior to this movie or since. There's a lot of that going on there. So, I recommend this movie. It is a hoot. I also recommend the original Blacula, which sadly is not available on Netflix. But Scream, Blacula, Scream is available, along with most of Pam Grier's movies at the time. Foxy Brown is available. So if you haven't seen it yet, rush out and check out. It's, again, still streaming instantly on Netflix. So check it out. Next week is my 100th episode of the B-Movie Club. 100. It's amazing. For those of you guys who've been with me from the beginning, I appreciate it. Thank you for all your support. Make sure you spread the word. Tell all your homies. When I started this, I kind of wanted to stay on kind of, well, Blacula quality films, kind of B-movie, off the beaten path, forgotten classics, guilty pleasures. But over time, you know, I have taken the time to do kind of things that don't necessarily fit into that box, you know, movies that I personally enjoy but were maybe a little bit more popular. I think that's what I'm going to do next week. We're going to go back to the comedy genre, the late 80s, Coming to America, one of my favorite films ever. One of my favorite comedies of the 80s, definitely, starring Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, James Earl Jones. The list goes on and on. John Amos. Is he in this? Yeah, he's in it. It's an all-star cast. What can I tell you? It is streaming instantly on Netflix. So spread the word, homies. I want the 100th episode to be our best episode ever. Like I said, you can go to our page on Facebook, Original B-Movie Club, and like it. You can go to our page on YouTube, KD9575, and you can subscribe. It's absolutely free. Also, you can reach me on Twitter at KD9575. Tell your parents, tell your children, tell your strangers on the street. So there you go. As you know, I end every episode with a totally out of context quote. And here it is. You disgust me. Good night. There it is. There were quite a few quotes in this movie, as you might imagine. I tried to pick something both innocuous and bizarre. I hope I did that. So there you go. As you know, we're doing Coming to America next week. So let me know what you think. Questions, comments, favorite scenes, favorite quotes. Thank you for joining us, and be well.